You gonna look fine. You're primed for dancing. You're gonna trip and glide out on a trampoline plane.
Mars has always been a storied subject throughout the history of cinema. Even as the mysteries of the Red Planet were peeled back over the last 100 years, Hollywood saw fit to keep speculating as to what might still be hiding in its last unexplored recesses, even after its surface proved less and less mysterious with each passing decade. Mars movies, as a result, have always been a little over the top. Maybe a little cheesy. Outlandishly speculative. And they're habitually prone to scientific inaccuracies, since they're right at the forefront of scientific discovery. A combination of all these factors means that most Mars movies tend to, alienate their viewers, but not me. I can't get enough of them. I like the crazy speculation. It's a big part of what makes space movies so fun, and we might as well leave the crazy speculation to Hollywood, because it's not the proper place for scientists.
Observation. You couldn't see a thing. Conclusion. Dinosaurs.
What follows are my 5 favorite films about Mars. Number 5, Robinson Crusoe on Mars. Leading off the list is the oldest of my 5 favorite Mars films. I hate to leave out earlier classics like War of the Worlds, The Angry Red Planet, Invaders from Mars, Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, but Robinson Crusoe on Mars is definitely my favorite of all the oldies. This film was released in 1964, at the height of Martian fever. Just a few months before Mariner 4 returned the first close-up images of the Martian surface. They weren't in color, but people still got the idea that this was a big deal. By this point in history, scientists were pretty positive that the air on Mars was too thin to breathe, that the surface temperature averaged well below freezing, that Mars possessed no permanent liquid water at its surface, and that there weren't any advanced alien civilizations living there. Robinson Crusoe reflects all these findings. The movie tells the story of an astronaut by the name of Robinson Crusoe who crash lands on the Red Planet and finds that the surface temperature is way too cold to support human life, that the air is too thin to breathe, and it's as barren as a brick. He retreats underground to escape these harsh conditions and there finds life-giving subterranean aquifers, edible plants, and rocks that produce oxygen when burned. How lucky! Yes, the O2 producing rocks are a little bit of a stretch of the imagination, but at least the screenwriter came up with something to fill the apparent plot hole. And in addition to the fairly accurate science, the film itself is pretty fun. Think Castaway in space. The second act is basically just the main character trying to come to terms with his loneliness with nothing but a monkey for companionship. Things get a little weird in the third act when Crusoe meets Friday, the alien slave, and hatches a plot to terraform the planet, which totally wouldn't work, but I still give it points for trying. If for nothing else, see this movie for what is perhaps the greatest special feature of all time. The Robinson Crusoe on Mars music video.
Robinson Crusoe, Robinson Crusoe on Mars. You be the astronaut, I'll be the guy from Mars.
Number 4, Rocketman. Yes, Rocketman. That Rocketman. I'm not gonna pretend like I'm too good to laugh at this.
What?
This movie tells the story of an engineering genius slash social moron who's selected to be part of the first manned mission to Mars.
Got it. There it is.
What? There's what?
This popcorn kernel's been stuck in my molars for the last 2 weeks.
Hilarity ensues. Rocketman was released at the very height of yet another Martian pop culture media craze, right at the end of the 20th century. NASA landed the first mobile rover on Mars in 1997, and suddenly the market was flooded with Mars movies. Mars Attacks in 1996, My Favorite Martian in 1999, Mission to Mars in 2000, and Ghosts of Mars in 2001, to name only a few. Rocketman came in 1998. To be fair, the film packs some surprisingly emotional moments into the proceedings.
Really does look like a giant blueberry.
What I love most about this film, besides its infectious enthusiasm for all things space, is how perfectly it encapsulates the embarrassingly awesome weirdness of space travel. Here I recommend one of my favorite books, Packing for Mars by Mary Roach, who goes into much greater detail than I ever could. Long story short, being an astronaut isn't all about riding rockets into space and planting flags on alien worlds. It's also about figuring out how to poop in zero gravity. Some would say that the poop stuff factors into the daily life of the average astronaut more than the heroical bits. Ever wonder why the traditional pre-launch breakfast at NASA is a plate of steak and eggs? It's not because of its inherent manliness and downright patriotic levels of cholesterol. It's because astronauts sit in their pre-launch seats for 9 hours before liftoff, and you can't be feeding them Fiber One the morning of.
That came out of nowhere.
Your body can metabolize 90% of a meal as rich in protein as steak and eggs. The cosmonauts came up with their own solution to this problem. The traditional pre-launch breakfast of the Russian space program is an enema. Number 3. Red Planet.
Fuck this planet.
Hold on. Wait 1 minute. Hear me out. Yes, this is like one of the most reviled films of the last 15 years, but not because it isn't entertaining. Red Planet has the honor of being the most scientifically inaccurate film on this list, sure, but it's still hella fun.
Line release! Full velocity!
And what science the film does get right is inserted into the film with downright heroic levels of enthusiasm.
Whoa! Sure gets some high arc in this low gravity, huh?
For educational purposes, here's a brief survey of its more glaring scientific mistakes. You can send all the UV-proof, oxygen-producing algae you want to the Red Planet, and assuming it survives the voyage through space, and assuming it survives the crash landing, and assuming it takes, and assuming it starts producing oxygen, you still won't be able to generate an atmosphere unless you generate a magnetic field first. There's no way a group of astronauts who have been sent to Mars specifically to find out why it doesn't have a breathable atmosphere could go all the way to the planet's surface and have to take off their helmets before they found out it did have a breathable atmosphere. These are arthropods, not nematodes. The film offers no explanation as to what the arthropods were eating before the humans were sending the algae. The DNA base pairs are not
AGTP.
But who cares? The movie's fun. And it knows not to take itself too seriously.
No joy in all scenarios for engine ignition. That includes hitting the console.
Long story short, this film is way more exciting and inventive and clever than any of the other more derivative entries in the esteemed subgenre of good people go into space and bad things happen to them. Number 2. John Carter.
Will it go? Go, damn you!
John Carter came out in the middle of a very brief revival of public interest in Mars, what with the launch of NASA's Curiosity rover in 2011. But basically the day after Curiosity landed on Mars and didn't discover aliens, public interest flatlined, and John Carter bombed. As did its 2 contemporary cohorts, Mars Needs Moms and The Last Days on Mars. I liked all 3, but John Carter was my favorite. It's not just a textbook example of the classic sci-fi adventure romance, it's the OG textbook classic sci-fi adventure romance. A Princess of Mars practically birthed modern space opera back when it was first published in 1912. And it gave a certain 9th grader all the female figure drawing source material he could ever ask for. The only reason modern audiences found the movie so comparatively bland was because all the great sci-fi filmmakers of history have been lovingly plagiarizing it for more than 100 years.
Let them be crushed.
In terms of scientific accuracy, John Carter does not present an accurate picture of the Red Planet. It doesn't have a breathable atmosphere, the gravity isn't nearly that weak, and it's not warm enough for people to survive for extended periods of time on its surface. But see, even back in 1912, when the novel was originally published, scientists knew all of that. And so did author Edgar Rice Burroughs. So why did he paint a picture of a habitable Mars in his novel? Burroughs wrote in his novel that the habitability of Mars was rapidly degenerating, with the understanding being that at some point between the 1870s and the 1910s, the planet became uninhabitable. Bing bang boom, that's how plot holes are filled. Number 1. Is there any debate? Total Recall. Paul Verhoeven's seminal classic from 1990 wasn't really interested in scientific accuracy, but it still got the general gist right. Mars is a hostile alien planet with no atmosphere to speak of and a surface pressure so low that you die within minutes if your space helmet broke open on its surface. Although it wouldn't be anywhere near this graphic. But who cares? This film is movie-tastic.
Get ready for a surprise!
Arnold Schwarzenegger goes to a memory implant company and finds out he may actually be a deep-cover secret agent with an erased memory. Or he might just be having a psychotic episode.
You blew my cover!
Either way, he embarks on an epic assortment of spectacular action set pieces as he seeks to liberate the lower classes of Mars from the wealthy elite ruling class.
Fuck him. Be a good lesson to the others.
Come on, Cohagen, you got what you want. Give these people air.
This film might not be super valuable in terms of educating the public on the conditions on the Red Planet, but it does have a lot of this.
Open your mind. Open your mind. Open your mind.
And it's pretty much the only Mars film ever made which has more than a 51% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And now I take the last minute of the video advocating for a manned mission to Mars.
Why? Because it's next.
Recent findings have indicated that rivers of liquid water may have been flowing across the Martian surface as recently as 100 million years ago. Now that may sound like a really long time ago, but it's not. Not in geologic terms, and certainly not in cosmic terms. Think about it like this. There could have been rivers of liquid water flowing across the surface of Mars at the same time Spinosaurus walked the Earth. If that doesn't blow your mind, then I don't know how to help you. Furthermore, the most recent data suggests that there could still be periodic flash floods on Mars even today. But until a human finally sets foot on Mars and starts digging underground looking for subterranean aquifers, we'll have to settle for Transformers teasers that are more exciting than the films themselves.
Get your ass to Mars.